From a Muslim standpoint, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Injīl or Gospel to his prophet Messiah, ʿīsā عليه السلام. According to the sacred Muslim text tradition, we can gather that the Injīl brought a more liberal, that is to say, relaxed or updated form of the Torah of Moses, that the Injīl contained deep spiritual verities, that it taught people how to engage the spiritual path to attain the love of God. The focus of the Injīl was on tazkiyatun nafs and ihsan. It reminded people of death, emphasized the afterlife as a priority, and warned against the snares of the dunya. The Injīl also predicted the coming of a messenger to come after Jesus, peace be upon him, a messenger called Ahmad, the most praised. The Qur'an also categorically denies that Jesus was crucified. Therefore, the cross would not have figured into the teachings of the Injīl at any level. The Qur'an also intimates that when Jesus appeared on the scene, the Israelites divided into two camps. Interestingly, Imam al-Razi says that these were two camps of Jewish Christians. In other words, Jews who believed in Jesus' messiahship in some way. فَآمَنَتْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّن بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَكَفَرَتْ طَائِفَةٌ فَأَيَّدَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّهِمْ فَأَصْبَحُوا ظَاهِرِينَ. But one group, one ta'ifa, believed and another ta'ifa disbelieved. And then we vindicated those who believed and they became the victorious. Now we know that the early Jewish Christians, or Nazarenes, Nasara, were sharply divided into two camps, the Pauline and the Jamesonian. The former was led by Paul of Tarsus, who introduced many Hellenistic ideas. The latter was led by James the Just, Ya'qub at-Sadiq, the brother of Jesus, who was head of the Jerusalem-based Nazarenes for over 30 years. Interestingly, while the principal author of the New Testament was Paul, not a single authentic writing of the historical James the Just is extant. According to Dr. James Tabor, James is the key for understanding the historical Jesus. Dr. Robert Eisenman sees a direct trajectory of teaching from James to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Therefore, when the Qur'an was finally revealed, James and his ta'ifa were finally vindicated. For decades, historians have grappled with something called the synoptic problem. The question is, why are Mark, Matthew, and Luke so similar at times? Most historians have concluded that there existed a significant degree of interdependency between the three Gospels. The most prevalent solution to the synoptic problem is called the two-source theory. According to this, Matthew and Luke had Mark on their desks, as it were, but they also had another source that scholars refer to as Q, or the Sayings Gospel. Dr. Dennis MacDonald calls it the first gospel. Q explains why Matthew and Luke had material in common verbatim that was missing from Mark. It appeared that Mark did not have access to Q, or he disregarded it for some reason, perhaps because it contained the teachings of James's ta'ifa, and Mark, who was highly Pauline, was simply not interested. When scholars reconstructed Q by isolating material found in Matthew and Luke, but missing from Mark, something interesting happened. Q contained various teaching parables, the ministry of John the Baptist, the Sermon on the Mount, including the Beatitudes and the Lord's Prayer, but no passion material, not even a passion prediction. In fact, you would be hard-pressed to find any material in Q that is offensive to Islamic theological sensibilities. Q is absolutely key for understanding what non-Pauline Christians believed about Jesus. How so? Well, Q was most likely written in the 50s, independent of Paul. Now, Q probably had different strata of authorship over several years, but even despite this, let me quote what eminent historian of Christianity, John Dominic Crossan, said about Q. Quote, "There is nothing in the gospel according to Q about the crucifixion of Jesus or the resurrection of Jesus." End quote. In other words, the passion narratives of Matthew and Luke either come from Mark, really a redaction of Mark, or are unique to their own gospel accounts, what textual critics call special M and L material. And of course, Mark was written after Q. So let me make this clear. According to historians, the earliest known source of the Gospels says nothing about the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. In addition to this, the traditions found in Q are plausibly representative of Jamesonian Christianity, that is pre-Pauline Nazarene Messianism. When Dr. Dennis MacDonald reconstructed the contents of Q, he said that Q was not written by a Christian, but by a Jew. He means a Messianic Jew, a Jew who believed in Jesus, but not in the Pauline sense. He says in Q, quote, "There is no salvation by Jesus because of his crucifixion," end quote. And in fact, there is no crucifixion. According to MacDonald, Jesus is making the Jewish law more compatible and more compassionate for people who are on the margins of society, and this is why Jesus had these arguments with the Pharisees. He says that when you extract the Jesus of Q, you get a Jewish reformer. You get a prophet and teacher of a more relaxed form of the law of Moses. This is very close to what the Qur'an says. Jesus is quoted in the Qur'an, "I have come to you to confirm the Torah before me and to make lawful for you some of what was unlawful. So fear God and obey me. God is my Lord and your Lord. Worship him. This is the straight path."